States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, minutes are the first point of order. And I have a few changes. All right, under the subject where Judge Stein discusses a new law passed that prohibits juveniles with offenses from being housed with adults. Okay, everybody get that? And then in the section where Commissioner Wolf discusses a potential new payroll position, this is the second sentence. Everything after the comma, I don't recall that comment. Do you need me to read that out loud? Okay, everybody good with that? Okay. And then under the compensation committee, I am not a part of that, but Megan Smith is. Any further discussion? Okay, with that, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes for our last meeting.
I move to approve.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Also, I want to welcome some special guests this morning. We have Councilwoman Hostetter's children here, Brooke and Blake. They chose to be here out of their own free will. Welcome, both of you. I understand, Brooke, you just took a test on governments across the world, so here you are seeing a small bit of government in practice today. So again, welcome to you both.
Okay,
Also-
Brooke, I have a question for you. Who's the best Boone County Council person in the world? That'd be your mother.
They had an answer. Also, Councilwoman Williams sends his regrets. He is with his family during this week of fall break. I think fall breaks fall on 3 separate weeks for our schools. So Zionsville this week, Lebanon next week, Webo next week, and then Lebanon. So, all right. And also, Jewel Lee, our council attorney, he will be here shortly.
He just
is
walked
stuck-
in.
Oh, great. Hello, welcome. And welcome to everyone else. Okay. Moving on in our agenda. New business. We have Corinne Gray here, clerk treasurer for Thorntown. Thank you for joining us. Please step up to the podium.
Debbie.
Yes, please, for the podium. Would be great.
For those who don't know me, I'm Corinne Gray. I am the clerk treasurer for the town of Thorntown. And as you all know, we have a wastewater project in the process. We're hoping to close on our SRF loan later this month. And we, back in August, submitted a letter to the county council requesting to see if you guys would help us with some of our funding through the ARPA funds that the county is receiving. Our total cost on our project is $2.8 million, and we currently have an Okra grant for $700,000. We applied for the SWIFT grant, and we were not awarded that grant. Very disappointing on that. We actually have been under a sewer ban in Thorntown for any new build. I started on our town council back in 2016, and at that point we started receiving letters from IDEM that our pond capacity was exceeding its capacity, and then we finally got to the point where we had to flat out just do something. So the town of Thorntown has received $355,000 on the ARPA funds. If we need to use all of that, we certainly will. We were hoping to be able to use some of that for a couple of other options that are out there, We have the READY program that's coming up. We were hoping to be able to participate in that financially. There's some ways that we can use money for our police department so that we can possibly give them a little bit of a stipend for working through the pandemic the way they did. So those are some things that if we can, we will. But if we need to use all $355,000 for our wastewater, right now our wastewater is going to take the priority. Our rates currently are $29.88 for 4,000 gallons of water usage. If we have to continue the way we are without any additional funding, our citizens are going to be charged $54.49 for 4,000 gallons, and that's an increase of $24.61. So for those in our community who may be on a fixed income, or those who may be on a lower income for their residential household, I think that's going to hurt them just a little bit. We have a couple of areas in town that have already basically been marked off many years ago where they can be a residential area. It can be a small little neighborhood. So if we're able to keep our wastewater rates lower, hopefully we're going to have somebody come in here in the future and hopefully develop those areas. And not only does that help the town of Thorntown, but that also helps Boone County as a whole, as a community, because as we bring in more homes, it brings in more people, and therefore it brings in more revenue for all of us in the county. So we have asked for, in our letter we submitted, we have asked for $2 million. Any amount that the county council would be willing to grant us would be so greatly appreciated. In the overall, the whole point is to hopefully keep our rate increase for our residents as low as we possibly can. And at this point, anything will help for our community. So thank you for taking the time to listen.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did I understand you correctly that you said there's a sewer ban?
Ban,
And why?
We're for new build. So we cannot,
okay.
because of our pond already being at capacity, we cannot have any new construction going
Okay.
on in town.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, you're welcome. Anything else?
So Corinne and I have been talking quite a bit lately, and you do have a situation there that's a serious one.
Yes.
As far as the ARP and FRF money, we do not have it in our account yet.
Not yet.
And we do not.
We are working with the Treasury and with David Bortoff from NACO. So there's a submission issue that other counties are also having. So they are working on it. We will have the money just as soon as the Treasury visits.
I get it.
So, in talks that Corinne and I had, she laid out what you did this morning with the $700,000 that you earned from Oprah. Congrats on that. And the disappointment, right? You were waiting
Yes.
for the SWIFT. That was.
That was a huge disappointment. I really was hoping that because we had the ban, that would
Right,
put us up a little bit on the award list, but
right,
evidently not high enough.
right.
What's the, excuse me for one moment, what's the history, if you know, when the last time the county contributed to a project in Thorntown with
I-
respect to the sewage, water?
I really have no idea.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
And then you are set to close on your state revolving loan fund. Is it November the 8th?
And yes,
Okay.
yes, we'll have our pre-closing in October, or later in October, and then right now, the total signing and everything is November the 8th.
And in just the conversations that we've had, and perhaps you could expound, was not aware of the letter until just very recently. So when we were talking, you broke it down and said, okay, what what would you be looking for? And you mentioned $1 million would be great. And then the rate increase would be very manageable for the citizens of Thorntown. So that's sort of what had been going on in my mind as far as $1 million for this project. So,
Yeah. Anything would just be so appreciated that, you know, it's just gonna help our community.
right.
Those projects that you mentioned, do you have an estimate about how much they might cost? I mean, 100,000, 200,000?
Oh, for the whole project?
No, like the police one, your other projects you wanted to fund with the ARP fund.
Oh, okay. So yes, we can actually give, and you might be able to help me, the term has totally escaped me, the little stipend for our police department and fire department, just a,
Yeah, keep it at that.
that works. And we haven't even, as, you know, as a council, we haven't even talked about the amount of money we would like to be able to give those folks, but if we could give, you know, each one of them even $2,000 for what they have done for our town would be absolutely fantastic. So, you know, we're not talking a lot that we want to spend out of our $355,000, but if, you know, if we could even be able to keep $100,000 of it for other things for the town, that would be fantastic, and use $255,000 toward our wastewater. But here again, if we need to put it all toward wastewater, that's what we're gonna do. So,
What was the amount for the grant that you were not awarded? What was that amount?
there was not an amount given to us for what we were applying for. You just simply applied for it, and they have given, the SWIFT has given different communities different amounts. So they didn't divide everything like an equal amount or anything. And exactly what all of their criteria was that they used, I don't know. Steve Brock worked on that quite a bit for us.
I was just curious if we could make that, whatever you're planning for that amount, if we can make that.
Right.
Or how-
Yeah, no, there was not a set amount when we applied for that.
All right.
One more question if I may, please. When, you had mentioned it was $29.88 for 4,000 gallons currently, and then it could go up to $54.99?
$54.49.
49. And when is the target date for that 54.49?
Later, and you know, I didn't write down my exact date. I don't know if you'll remember, Elise. Later in October, Sarah, do you even recall what date Steve said he has to roll this stuff into SRF?
Trying to 18.
The 18th.
Yeah.
So he will submit all the final paperwork to the SRF at that point. There will be a pre-closing meeting, and then as of right now, November 8th is what is scheduled for the final.
I sure hope we're able to help you, because, man, that's a 50% increase there.
Yeah.
Or, excuse me, almost 100% increase, $29.88 to
Yeah, it's-
$54.49.
Yeah,
It's gonna hurt a lot of people's checkbooks.
yes, it is.
So time is of the essence with this one. You don't want to put it out to be rebid because you think the cost is going to go up, and you've got the closing for the SRF. So
Yes.
this
And-
would be the first time that we've made a motion, taken a vote to support the spending of the county's allocation from the feds on this. And so it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, Jewel, with the process, and to Commissioner Santelli's email as well, as far as, you know, vote in this body, vote in that body. So we'll figure that out. I think the biggest question is, will we have the money, and will a letter of support or obligation suffice at this point?
Right.
So,
I'm hoping to hear back from Steve Brock, hopefully sometime today, and once I do, I'll certainly forward that on to you and see what they say. All right.
all right, council.
I'd make a motion to give them $1 million.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for $1 million. Do we have a second?
I have a question. I thought there were some emails going around still, and we were waiting on guidance from like our attorney and the commissioner's attorney on, or Ice Miller, on how the money was going to be delegated and who I guess has the. I just want to make sure we're following whatever guidelines are, so we don't get in trouble.
Right.
Or has
that's
that
what I
been?
was just mentioning.
Okay. Yeah.
You still, as the council, you still appropriate the money,
Okay.
and then it goes through the claims process. So basically, the council and the commissioners are supposed to work together for the directive from the feds as what projects they are going to fund. You then, just as a normal budgeting process, you allow the appropriation or don't allow the appropriation. So you're still doing your job as far as the appropriation goes.
I'll second it. I do want to comment. I don't recall any money in at least 17 years that we've spent for Thorntown. So for
Thank
your
you.
question,
Yeah.
but that could be a failure of memory too.
Sure.
Can I just chime in with this? So the funds flow from the Treasury to the IFA. If you've got a project, and Whitestown's already received funding because they've filled out the project information, they've submitted it, the funds have been released. In this case, we've got an important project. It really drives around economic development. It is clearly one of those buckets that is meant for the American Rescue Plan Act. So what we want to make sure of also is that when we fund a project that we don't come to 2024 and have to pay some of the money back because it wasn't properly allocated. And that's why we've got Ice Miller to work with IFA and define the projects and get the money. My concern here is that they've got 700,000. They need 2 million to complete this phase of the project. So partially funding is not necessarily going to benefit the project where they've got a hold on sewer connects, which again, that drives economic development in the Thorntown area. To Marcia's point, I can't remember when we've allocated, and these are American Rescue Plan Act funds that are specifically designated for this kind of project. And what I don't want to have happen is that we partially fund it, and because it's partially funded, we can't do it as it was defined. So I just want to, add those points of clarification that the project is defined, it's funded. We go to the IFA work with Ice Miller and make sure those funds are released. As Debbie pointed out, it's working together to come up with these projects that really fit the ARPA funding designations. So I just wanted to bring that point of clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. And Corinne, would you?
And it's Tom Santelli.
We really appreciate you bringing this need to our attention and are very happy to partner with you on this. Thank you for the time that you've spent with me on the phone and for just the partnership between the grant money that you've received, the ARP, your willingness to work with the State Revolving Loan Fund, which is very favorable terms, and then us as a partner as well, bringing in a component of that. So we have a motion on the floor for $1 million, significant contribution toward the needs in Thorntown, and it sounds like that would be a good level of partnership as far as everybody coming together, doing their part without any kind of undue difficulty. Okay.
We're still discussing
Yes.
the motion. So the project's gonna happen,
Yes,
and so what we don't fund is just gonna be reflected in the rates.
yes.
That's, I mean, it's not whether the project happens or not, it's gonna happen, it's just how much impact.
Right,
And
right.
So, you know, my thought, and I know we got a motion on the floor, so I don't, but my thought was to split the middle and go with something more like 1.5 and help more with the rates. And that's, so I know we got a motion, we can vote on that, but that was my gut was to do a little bit more than the million, so.
I could withdraw mine, couldn't I?
You, or we can just vote it down if you don't, if you agree with that, but that's, that's just my discussion of this motion. I don't, and we can vote on it, and if you wanna, I don't know how much impact that would make, but it sounds like that would be better for the Thorntown citizens.
Was it a million that it totally went up?
That's a good.
I think it was about 800,000, wasn't it?
Just the letter of intent.
Can we appropriate money that we don't have yet? Okay,
So this motion needs to be something like a letter of intent,
Yes.
so.
That was my other concern.
Yeah.
and,
Put it down, I'll resubmit.
okay, yeah, just take a vote.
You can withdraw it.
She said I had to put it down.
Yes,
Oh.
yes. Just take a vote.
Second.
Okay, so we're gonna take a vote on this motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye, or no, nay, whatever. Okay, all right, I have another question. Since they need the money here by basically the end of the month, 1st of the November, do you give them money out of rainy day and get reimbursed by the ARP funds?
Cannot be done.
And, Julie, if you have any comments on this?
Cannot reimburse rainy day from ARPA funds.
So most likely you need a short-term loan until we receive these funds after applying through the grant process.
And I'm not sure how that's going to work out. That's kind of, for us, a Steve Brock question. He's our consultant that we work with on this. So I don't know. It may be something where we use what we have now, if we have to pay anything before the end of the year. Otherwise, it may all just roll over into 2022 before we actually pay anything.
Sebastian Smelko with Ice Miller's the expert on this that's going to be working with the commissioners on developing the project list. It's my understanding, excuse me, as far as your project goes, if once the project list is developed by the commissioners, you appropriate the funds, whatever that amount is, we can use that to provide to the town whatever other entities are necessary that the funds are coming. As long as they're received prior to construction, I would think we'd be fine when the construction starts going.
Some of the things he said he'll be able to start in November, but since we've been pushed back so much, the actual digging of the lagoon itself may not start till spring.
Until spring. So the majority of the costs will be in probably spring.
Yeah.
So we should be okay with that, as long as we all act expeditiously. Thank you. Bob Clark.
And when it's completed, are they still going to use that same rate, $29.88 for 4,000 gallons usage? When the project is completed?
No, whatever we end up and have to bond out with SRF, then Steve will reconfigure the rates, and that rate will, I mean, it's still going to increase above that $29, but we will not have to almost double.
Yeah,
So it will increase a little.
thank you.
All right, so do we have a motion?
Should be in the form of a letter of intent then. Make a motion for a letter of intent to Thorntown for $1.5 million.
Okay, do we have a second?
A second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, have happy to partner with you on this and with the commissioners also.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Next on our agenda, Prosecutor Kent Eastwood will discuss the drug court ARP request.
It's actually just Shine, I'll let her do it.
Hey, Judge Shine, thank you for joining us this morning.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Obviously, Mr. Eastwood is here as well. I have Community Corrections here and Ashley McClure with pretrial release. We have some updates that we want to just give the council where we're at on the drug court. Good news is we did receive an additional $60,000. I found out last week that we were able to get that money from the Justice Partners Addictions Response Grant. So currently in our fund line, we have just under $180,000 as seed money to get it started. However, the bad news is that from Department of Corrections and Community Corrections, Boone County already receives the most or the maximum amount that we can receive from grant money for community corrections. And that was where we were going to fund our employee, our court administrator, through those funds. I'll let Michael maybe speak a little bit more to that, but we did not get the grant money through the DOC grant. And when he inquired, my understanding is it wasn't that they didn't agree with it or thought it was a great idea. It was that Boone County, there's a formula, and we're already maxed out pursuant to that formula on what we can get from the Department of Corrections. Am I correct in that?
Exactly. So it's actually in statute, but it's taxable income is part of the formula. Citizens age 10 to 34 factors in, and then it's just this page-long math equation that they use to come up with how much money each county can have. What they tried to do a few years ago is basically the Marion County and Lake counties of the world were taking 50% of their budget and using all of it, and they said that's not right. We need to redistribute this more equally. So then they came up with this formula to decide how much should each county get, and we currently are at the maximum amount allowed, which is important to know thinking about any project going forward is, we're not, if we're going to go to the DOC and ask for more money, we're going to start cutting other stuff out of our community corrections budget for them to give it to us. So
anyway, the group of us got together to kind of figure out and reassess where we can find some more money lines. And so Mr. Eastwood has been gracious enough to offer up the payment for the prosecutor, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, what we're gonna do is, for years 2 and, our hope is to basically fund this for 3 years or know what the funding is coming for 3 years. Because our intent is to have 3 years worth of data, 3 years worth of stories, to then talk to the various people that help fund this to make sure we have funding going forward. Whether that's this body, whether it's other grant people, but have 3 years worth of data to make sure that this is a program that's worthwhile and we're operating correctly. So with that, the prosecutor's office will fund through its regular budget years 2 and 3 of our prosecutor. We're going to use the money for some of the 180 that Judge Stein has got. We're going to use some of that for the first year, but years 2 and 3, that's going to be about, I think when it's all said and done, $30,000 to $35,000 a year to cover a prosecutor. That includes all the taxes and stuff like that. So we're going to cover that in years 2 and 3.
And then Michael Nance came up with a fairly creative idea on how we can fund the healthcare providers or the mental health providers. I think we're going to try to go with Aspire and Integrated Wellness, but most of those participants, they'll get counseling and treatment services through either their private insurance or through public assistance, but we still have to pay those individuals to be there for court staffing purposes and during the actual court hearings that we have for drug court. So, Michael, I'll let you speak to that.
Sure. So that's one of the big pieces that we were trying to figure out how to fund was the treatment providers. And when I looked at our grant, for our DOC grant, there's some money available in there for treatment-specific issues. So we can shift a little bit of that away from the jail program that we were probably going to end up having to send back anyway because we're getting a better deal now with the Inwell and Aspire than we did in the past with our former treatment providers. So we're going to use that money, keep it here in the county, and pay them to do the drug court. Also, community corrections buy-in is going to be, we're going to provide all of the field officers, which is going to be a pretty big resource, as well as the case management. So really, all I think we're coming to you for is that coordinator position. When we first sat down, we thought about trying to get all of that funded, the treatment providers, the field officers, the case managers, the coordinators. but we recognize that that's a pretty big ask, especially at the beginning. So we came up with a way to really take most of it off of your shoulders. The bottom line from Community Corrections is I cannot afford in my budget to pay for the coordinator position. Ashley's currently doing the coordination of the drug court as well as pretrial, and she still has a caseload on the pretrial program. We're busting at the seams as far as pretrial is concerned. We're at 250 plus people that have to be seen mostly weekly, all of those by 2 individuals. And keep in mind, all of those pretrial individuals, if not for that program, would be in your jail, taking up space, costing you a ton of money. So I think we're certainly doing our part to try to save some money for the county in the council. So all we're asking is for the coordinator position to be funding so that I could shift what I'm paying Ashley currently to a case manager, probably 2 case managers, to get pretrial to where it should be.
And we understand this is the request that we will be making next year, but we wanted to give the council sort of a heads up on what we're asking. We would like to make that position a court position under circuit court, including benefits. We want to make that position salaried, somewhat related, or along the same lines as a probation officer gets paid. So that's where we're going to be hopefully in February or March of next year. But we felt we needed to kind of keep all of you apprised, and hopefully we can have some of your support as we try to work with the money that we have. And I know you do have the ARP money, so it would be helpful if you had some money for the drug court to get it started at least initially. And also, once we have it running, we are eligible then for other grant monies on the federal level. And that's significant because we're not eligible for that until we have at least, 3 years of operation and some statistics. Once you are eligible for those monies, and they're in the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we could possibly use. Also, user fees and whatnot as we go forward, the program should start to pay a little bit for itself. So, but we have some money to get started, but with regard to the benefits for an employee to do this full time, we are going to need some buy-in from the council and the county at that level. So
We've got a preliminary budget of approximately $400,000 to run the court. That includes benefits, that includes taxes, employment taxes and all that, education.
but different funding
Treatment,
sources.
yeah, treatment providers, a total of $400,000. And so of that $400,000, what we're looking for is an $80,000 commitment from the council. Or 85. 85. Because that 85 covers the salary and then all the
benefits
and stuff
healthcare
for that person. So the rest of that money, right now, we've found some sources to pay for that. In addition to that, we were on a Zoom meeting last week, and one of the things that we heard in that meeting with the State Department of Health and
Division of Mental Health and Addiction.
Thank you, Division of Mental Health and Addiction, was we need buy-in from everybody before they'll consider giving us money. So what we have here is you guys buy in with your 85. I bought in with 35. We have community corrections. All of our everyone's bought in. We got $5,000. Actually, got $5,000 for educational supplies from a grant the other day. So we have that buy-in. It makes us more attractive to other state grants. So that's like Judge Stein said. We're just making sure you guys understand that in January, February, whenever you guys will allow us to come back and ask for some type of additional, we're going to do that.
So in the meantime, let's work with DMHA, and it sounds like we could leverage some money from them for this.
Well, yeah, that's a possibility, but you guys have got to buy in too.
Yes, of course.
That's 100%. I mean, they're not going
But
to do it unless you guys
let's
buy
work
in.
on that in the months ahead
Okay.
and see where that gets us.
Yeah. I mean, any funding source, I'm willing to talk to those people. So we'll get it done. But
So are you wanting to apply for ARP funds through this
How
for the 3 years?
That would be the perfect scenario.
it would be great to have an amount that we could then say to that court employee, hey, your job is secure in this for 3 years. We haven't, and we'd have to do it in the normal course of business, which is put it out there and interview people and whatnot. But certainly we have people that we have in mind that have been a part of the process. But no, we would have an interviewing process. So no, nobody's been hired. It's not even a position yet. But.
So the request, if we apply this in the projects list, would be for how much then?
Well, 3 years at $85,000 a year, so that's 250,000.
Not the 400?
Well, we've got
The rest of it is paid through other funding sources.
other funding sources.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, but do we really want to use those other funding sources?
I
If you
mean,
want to give us 1.2 million.
Marcia, I would love to have as much money as you want to give me.
I'm just, you know, this is something that if we do it for 3 years, you're gonna come back and say,
Sure,
we want to do it for another 25 years.
sure. Again, with the idea though that we're gonna be looking at other funding sources, and there is an element of, it does start to pay for itself through user
Yeah.
fees and whatnot,
I
so.
mean, yeah, that's another thing. We have an idea how much in user fees we're going to get. We just don't know. And so we've kind of preliminarily thought of the amount we can get. But also, as I've experienced, as Judge Shine said, once we get the data, more grants become available and they open up. And we've all researched those, we've all looked at those. So,
I mean, we don't need a letter of intent today, but we need you to get with the commissioners on their project list.
Okay,
Would be
I could
the
do that.
solution, because there's no point in doing a letter of intent. But the amount money seems to be up in
listen,
the air a little bit.
it would be great to get,
I'll take
$500,000, that would get us going, that would probably, we'd have it going for a good 4 or 5 years without having to come back to the council at all, period. But then I'd have to come back and ask you to at least create a position and put it on the ordinance, or the Sally ordinance and whatnot. But that would be that would be enough, we wouldn't hear from us other than good news stories.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, I'll spend my money elsewhere. So that's how important it is that we need to get this moving. So.
But I will definitely get on the commissioner's agenda and see if we can get the drug court on their project list in the meantime. But we just wanted to keep all of you informed and ask for your support. It's going to be a lot of work. I know that it took our Family Recovery Court, the court administrator, a good 6 months of just working on the details and the program requirements and the rules and whatnot before that we were even able to start to be certified and get pre-certification. So it's not going to be something that we can start January 1. It's going to be closer to like next summer, maybe next fall, before we can get it all going. But I just want to give you a heads up.
In general, I would just add, the teamwork stuff is
Yes.
really cool, and we
I think
wanna
that
be-
shows how much we think we need it
And
in
we
this
want to be a
county.
part of it, so however that works out best is good, but thank you very much for all your work leading
You're
up to
welcome.
it.
Thank you for
very
your
much.
time.
This is such a critical program for our county.
Put your money where your mouth is. Business shout. Sorry, I didn't mean that disrespectful, but
Slipped out.
I appreciate that. I know you support it, so I just, again, it's gonna be a funding issue, at least in the beginning, and I appreciate your time today, so thank you.
Thank you.
From the commissioner's perspective, Tom Santelli, Elisa and I, and the sheriff and others are working on the mental health and addiction piece. I serve with the lieutenant governor on specifically the communication side of mental health and addiction, and making sure the community is aware of resources. And in this case, again, the ARPA funds are specifically allocated within the buckets that they've early outlined. And that's why, working with ICE Miller and the IFA, we can propose these fund projects and then get the funds released. And so it's a good team effort, not only from what's going on from community corrections and probation, the prosecutor and the judges, but also from the council and commissioners. These are very important issues for our community. I think Justin is here, and he's presented to the commissioners the problems that we've got, not only with adults in our community, but also with youth, in terms of the use of his resources, the coroner. And so these are, again, a good team effort on everybody's part to make sure that we're using the ARPA funds as effectively as we can with the biggest impact on our community. Thanks.
Can I ask one more question briefly? I just need some clarification as far as a timeline, because again, Ashley's doing all of this right now in my office, and we're pretty overwhelmed at this point. So I appreciate that we can't spend money we don't have yet, and we need to go to the commissioners meeting and all of that, but could somebody give me a timeline of when we would know an answer as far as if that money's going to be available and allocated specifically for that position? Because in reality, we can't continue to do this for another 6 months. Again, she's responsible for 130 people this week on top of coordinating pretrial and on top of trying to get drug court off the ground. We can continue to try to fight for air for a little bit, but we can't do it forever. So, and I'm not being disrespectful. I just really need to know. It sounds like you're fairly supportive. I just need to know a timeline of when we would be able to hire somebody to replace her in her daily duties so that we can adequately supervise pretrial.
Tom, did Ice Miller give you an estimate of when you applied for the money that you, I mean, 3 months,
yes,
4
yes,
months, 2
yeah,
months?
Yes. Elise alluded to in her letter back to me, we both, worked with Mark Harebrant and others with regards to how quickly we can get those funds released. From my perspective, in issues where we've got timeline crunches, we're going to be working on that expeditiously in terms of getting that information. I don't have an answer off the top of my head for you, Marcia, but by the next council meeting, we'll have the project list. We'll be working with the IFA and find out how quickly we can get those funds. I think that Ashley's been working on this for 3 years.
Pre-trial, approximately 3 years.
Pre-trial.
Yeah.
So each year they have worked very diligently to try and get funding, but because of formulations and things like that, they haven't got it. This is the perfect storm in terms of having these ARP funds that are specifically allocated to this. So I think that, again, a lot of funds, Whitestown's had some funds released. Hamilton County's had a lot of funds released. So I think that if we go to the IFA, make sure that we've reviewed it, submit it, that we should get those funds released. And as Elise pointed out, we haven't done this yet, so others have and have an excellent track record. So let us get back to you, Marcia, with a good answer in terms of the timeline.
If somebody could let me know.
Michael, what is your timeline? You mentioned coming back in January. Do you need it sooner than that, or is January good?
No, I mean, I need it today is what I need it. I mean, I need to hire somebody to start working in pretrial, but I can't do that while I'm still paying Ashley to work in pretrial. We can make it till January. It's already October. I mean, it is what it is at this point. That's why I was trying to get an idea on if we start talking about next summer before.
Your first additional wouldn't be until February.
Right.
Okay, so that's the timeline then that we're working toward. And between now and then, let's just keep moving forward. I fully support what this drug court does and what it means for our county. It makes a big difference in people's lives and helping them turn around.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the meantime, since we have this time, one of the things with the 13 million, right, that we were allocated, coming up with that plan of how to use it, and then also, in some cases, that money can be leveraged for additional money.
Right.
So we want to be smart with that. In some cases, there are other options where we can get funding through this bucket, and this bucket can be preserved for other things. So we're just asking those questions, but let's keep figuring out how to fund this at the top of our priority list, one way or the other.
Sure.
And so if we could work together on pursuing the one opportunity that we know is available to us through the Department of Mental Health and Addiction, and see what they're looking at from us to partner with us in sharing some of these costs.
Okay.
Yeah, part of the problem is what they'll want to pay for is what he can pay for. That's the problem.
that's gonna be the problem, that they will pay for the mental health and addiction resources and.
The treatment providers.
Treatment providers, but he can also pay for that. Right now, he can't pay for anything else. And Division of Health can't pay for anything else, so that's gonna be, yeah, that's gonna be the issue.
All right, well, if it is, it is. If there's a way, let's at least take one step forward. Yeah, okay. Great.
Thank you.
All right, next, Auditor Crum, the 2022 County Fiscal Body Review.
Yes, Marcia has the levy rates and then she'll read them for us. All you're doing is giving your approval and then we will forward all the letters out to the entities.
Okay, under Boone County Civil Max Levy Fund Credits, $488,000. Center Township, the Civil Max Levy Fund Credits, $10. The Township Fire Credits, $190. Clinton Township, Civil Max Levy Fund Credits, $10. Township Fire Credits, $10. Harrison Township, Civil Max Levy Fund Credits, $20. Township Fire Credits, $10. Jackson, Civil Max Levy, $120. Township Fire Credits, $10. Jefferson, Civil Max Levy, $10. Township Fire, $10. Marion, Civil Max Levy, $10. Township Fire, $10. Sugar Creek, Civil Max Levy, $70. Township Fire Credits, $20. Washington, Civil Max Levy, $10. Township Fire Credits, $10. Okay, Worth, Civil Max Levy, $1,930. Township Fire Credits, $240. Lebanon, Civil City, Civil Max Levy is $20,790. Advance, Civil Max Levy is $8,980. Jamestown, Civil Max Levy, $1,290. Thorntown, Civil Max Levy, $1,150. Ulen, Civil Max Levy, $100. Whitestown, Civil Max Levy, $1,981,390. Zionsville, Civil Max Levy, $699,090. Western Boone School Corp, Civil Max Levy, $790. School Operations Credits, $13,010. Zionsville Community Schools, School Operations Credit, $2,230,690. Lebanon Community School Corp, Civil Max Levy, $600. School Operations Credits, $281,420. Lebanon Public Library, Civil Max Levy, $2,450. Thorntown Public Library, Civil Max Levy, $380. Hussey Mayfield Memorial Library, Civil Max Levy, $90,520. Motion is to accept these levy rates.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next one's when we do our budget hearing.
So moving on. Nick Parr, Highway Director. Future federal aid projects.
Nick Parr, Boone County Highway. I just wanted to touch base with you before we get to the next meeting where I'll need more definitive motions and approvals. So kind of a heads up, NDOT has put out that there will be a call for projects available in November that local public agencies can submit their projects to get federal funding. What that amounts to is federal gas tax. I've explained before, but just for the sake of the conversation, federal gas tax gets paid by anybody that gets gas And our stance is we want to get as much back to Boone County as we possibly can, leverage those dollars to improve our infrastructure, what it's meant for. In the case of bridge projects, it'll be 80-20. We would have to match everything 20%. The federal dollars would match 80% of the project entirely. So that would be design, right-of-way, construction inspection. So for those type of projects, we typically look at bridges and roads. In our case this year, we have multiple bridges, as you've heard many times about the condition that we have. So we got a couple bridges we want to look at. Take an analysis. We got our bridge inspections were just completed last month. We're going to take some input from the bridge inspection firm that did that. We'll take our previous bridge inspections that have been done and find possibly a couple bridges that are going to be good candidates for federal aid dollars. To be a good candidate, unfortunately, it needs to be a bigger size project. You're matching 80-20, but you also have to go through the environmental process. So typically our smaller local bridges aren't as good of a project to go after federal aid dollars. So we got a couple bridges that I think would be a good fit. There was a letter sent out by NDOT that listed multiple bridges that would qualify because they scored below a 4 in multiple categories. However, most of those bridges are 20 to 30 foot span, and approximately 4 or 5 of them were already in some stage of development to get replaced with local dollars, community crossing dollars. So looking at a couple bigger bridges, possibly Bridge 401. It's in Jackson Run. It's similar to Bridge 192, which is a federal aid project we have going on currently. It'll be a bigger bridge, just like Bridge 192 is. Definitely got some restrictions in that flow.
Could you mention where these bridges are located?
Yes.
so everybody's
Yeah,
aware?
Bridge 401 is County Road 300 South between 875 East and 975 East. That one is actually it's 2 culverts that's under fill, so it's under concrete. Only one of which is working. We have a scour problem on the inlet side where water's trying to run through the other culvert and it can't. So it circles around and runs back out, and it's scouring around the footing. That bridge would need to be substantially bigger, wider, of course, to accommodate the current design standards. The other bridge is Bridge 61, County Road 1000 East, north of State Road 32. Currently it's over Big Eagle Creek, so a pretty good sized bridge. Frequently comes out of its banks when we have large rains. It's got problems with the substructure. So both of those we're taking a look at and see what that cost would look like for the entire project. Typically bridges like this are going to cost a couple $1 million to replace for the whole project. Some could be construction $2 million. It's a volatile market right now. But we're looking to see what that would look like, because when we get to construction, these could possibly be funded with future bond funds. Looking ahead to what we're going to be renewing the bonds that we currently have for 2025, 2026, and 2027. These bridges would fall in construction and inspection in that range of years. So trying to plan ahead for those bonds, we've got the commitment that that's going to be something that's an ongoing, so we want to plan for projects that would be ready for the big expense during that time. We would have to fund 20% of the construction or of the preliminary engineering and the right-of-way likely before we would get to those bond funds being available for construction and inspection. So that's why we're looking at 2 of them. We've historically only gone after 1 at a time. Due to that, having to pay for the construction at the same time would be a substantial expense out of local dollars. For even the 20% match of $2 million is, we're getting $800,000 in Coon Bridge. We wouldn't be able to do that. So we're kind of taking a different approach on that. We also have 2 federal aid bridges currently in process that will be done by the time that those would get to construction. So Bridge 41, construction is expected to start next year, and then Bridge 192 the following year. So 41 is 200 East up by the county line in Clinton County, and Bridge 192 is on 300 South between 800 East and 875 East. So those 2 projects would roll off before these 2 projects would go to construction. We currently finished Bridge 154, which was a federal aid project, 500 West, south of Middle Jamestown Road. That one just finished up, so we always try to keep the projects going with federal aid dollars, keep bringing back those federal gas tax dollars back to Boone County. Also looking at a highway safety improvement project, which are funded at 90-10, so we would pay 10% of the cost, similar to what we did with the roundabout project we submitted last year. It has to meet certain criteria to qualify for those dollars. It's safety dollars that's set aside separately. With NDOT administers those projects as well. We'd be looking at a project to replace our signs throughout the entire county. We got approximately 5,500 signs, and we are not able to make headway on getting a lot of those replaced There's many signs in poor condition that need to be updated. Current standards, retroreflectivity, things of that nature. Our local road safety plan addressed that, and is something we've always thought about doing, needed to do, and now I think we have the personnel in place to be able to help guide that project to get completed. The cost estimate for that project is a little bit unknown at this point. We'll look at all the signs, possibly when we submit for the application, but all the signs aren't going to get replaced because there's going to be a lot of signs replaced before we ever get to construction. A lot of signs have been replaced since that inventory was completed. So we've been keeping that inventory updated. But, you know, just for instance, signs that face the south lose retroreflectivity faster just due to the sunshine, burning the retroreflectivity material off of them much quicker. So there will be a design analysis to look at exactly which signs need to be replaced before it gets bid for construction. Likely the 10% match will come from MVH dollars. It'd be a good suit for project preservation, reconstruction, that we are allowed to spend MVH dollars, but we pay the 10% likely out of MVH on the HSIP project. And then the Coombe Bridge dollars would likely have to guide what we would spend for the match on the design of the two bridges before we would get to construction, and we would be planning for bond funds on those. Don't have those cost estimates ready to go, but working on those currently, and we will need a letter signed by the fiscal body before we can submit the application for funding. That's just a commitment, a financial commitment, indicating that the county will support our match portion throughout the project.
Questions?
You do a lot of acronyms,
Yes.
and you're very impressive with road numbers.
I say them very fast too. I don't want to keep everybody's time, but if you want more details, I can lay it all out.
You're fine.
And if I could email as fast as I could talk, I'd send you all an email and explain all that.
But real quick,
Yep.
on big picture stuff, think about BF&S and their, the plan and kind of where does that all fit in? Remind us kind of where we're at. We want to be looking long range and goals and things like that. So real quick.
Yeah, so that's probably a lot larger discussion on how do we get there. If you're looking at what they talked about, how much a year we need to put, I think that's over a long span because the construction dollars really, there's no way we could afford
I guess I'm just
construction.
thinking specifically when you're giving us this update, and we're thinking what's right in front of us, and then, but also how does that fit in then with what's
Correct.
the big plan?
Yeah, so there would be a lot more to that discussion, I think, other than just, I can say, hey, it fits right into the plan and everything's great. We're so far behind where we need to be to get on the plan. We're currently, BF&S took a high-level view. I'm right in the
Right.
weeds of it. So when I see bridges that we're working on that are built in the 70s and the 80s, and we aren't even touching the ones that are built in the 30s and have been weight rated for 30 and 40 years.
Right.
So that's where the plan is great. We've got a lot of funding. Coombe Bridge is where it's at. There's not sufficient funding to sustain everything over the long period. Be able to do community crossings and federal aid match, it's not possible. So that's where the bond funds come in. How are they going to look long term? When BF&S did their analysis, that was news to them that it was going to be, hey, we're going to do this long term. Sounds good, but we got a gap right now. So we don't have any bond funds after this year. We essentially have no bond funds for 3 years. So are we behind in those 3 years? Absolutely. We're not going to be able to do what we need to do to match, even to go after community crossing dollars. We're going to have to really search for funding sources. We're going to have to look at Coombe Bridge, additional bonds. I know nobody wants to talk about more taxes. I get that. How that ties to any other taxes that get increased. I can see your concerns, and I don't sit in your chair. I just see it from our end. There's a gap of a few years where we don't have bond funds, so we can't continue to do what we need to do, as BF&S laid out, to do this many projects, to do this many bridges, to get your standards up, to get your roads and bridges up to the standards we need to, because the narrow bridges, we heard about the last commissioners meeting, how frustrating that is for many of our agricultural users. That's not even including those. Those bridges are passable. They aren't weight rated, but my new combine won't go across there. My auger cart won't go across there. I'm making 5 and 6 mile detours. Those aren't even part of the condition ratings. That's where we're way behind in getting some of those small structures and bridges taken care of that are still structurally good, but a huge inconvenience now the way we do business in this county with agriculture. I did have one other item, if there's no other questions on the federal aid projects. Want to bring it to your attention, discussing it with the commissioners as well. We have a staffing concerns going into the wintertime. I know it's always a hot item. Frequently, as soon as it happens, snow happens, ice happens, everybody that can get an email or a phone call does. Just want to warn everybody, I don't want to say prepare for more of those, but we're looking at possibly getting a contractor on board to be able to help with some of the subdivisions that we're responsible for, so we can have our people that do subdivisions able to help in the wide open areas, and also work with some of our new people. We have multiple people retire. We're filling several gaps. We're going to be 2 people short at a minimum throughout the winter time due to some other issues. So we're going to have our staff that typically can fill in those subdivision areas have to be working with our other people and in other areas. We're going to be filling as many new salt truck drivers, could be as many as 4 out of 9. That's a lot. And when you're going into the season knowing that, it's an even bigger issue with COVID and quarantine and health issues and anything that can happen with anybody's family members and things of that nature that we have no control over. So working with the commissioners on how do we come up with a plan to get a contractor, and how that affects you is how do we pay for that. So that may be something we bring to the next meeting as well. We're looking at different contractors, getting an idea on what that would cost. Right now it's an unknown. How many times would you even need them? It's very, very hard to pinpoint that. Could we need them 1 time throughout the entire winter or 10 times? And the cost of that would vary greatly. So wanted to bring that to your attention as well while I was up here talking about it. Not to be the bearer of bad news with everything, but that was all I had.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
All right, compensation committee update. Megan, would you please speak to that as Commissioner Williams is not? Thank you. And by the way, we did change on the minutes to make sure that it reflects that you are on the compensation committee.
Okay. Megan Smith, Human Resources. So I've reviewed the 7 RFPs that we received. I've sent them all to Councilman Williams. I was instructed to pick my top 3 and that we would schedule a time for the rest of the committee to meet and interview the top 3. So I've gone through them all. I've picked my top 3. I don't know if Aaron's going through them as well. Currently, we're trying to schedule a meeting to discuss it and set up a time to meet with the committee.
Thank you very much. And we have our 2022 budget adoption following this meeting. But one more item on our list, an update on the Boone County Justice Commission.
We've created a list with the names of the people that will work together in the small work groups, and we're trying to finish up the contact list, and then we've tried to create a few instructions, and so we'll be getting that out shortly. Did you have solid waste on there, an update for solid waste?
No, I don't.
Okay, I can give you an update on the solid waste. Great group, great organization. Currently, we do a grant process for recycled materials, and that due date has come in, and we'll be considering here in November those projects for approval. And our 2 staff members are constantly going into the schools and doing programs and promoting recycling and good environmental stewardship. So,
Thank you.
okay.
All right. Do not have any reapproves or additionals or salary amendments. So with that, do we have public comment? All right. We need to do our document signing and.
Question.
Yes.
Was Nathan on the agenda for the CVB?
We talked about it last month at our CVB meeting of me presenting.
Okay, under old business, an update from the home field project?
No, from the ARP funds. Public funds.
Okay, I'm sorry, Nathan, I don't recall.
We were there.
Okay,
We had
I
that
apologize.
conversation.
Is that okay to, I
I mean, if you have a
I'm
section
sorry.
in your local,
okay, yes, go ahead, I'm remembering now.
in your local things to add additional new business or reports, that's fine. Normally, the agenda, once you start the meeting, you have an opportunity to amend the agenda at the beginning of the meeting. But if you have an internal local rule that allows for the additional reports, I don't see a problem.
Okay, so how would you suggest that we proceed?
I don't know what the report is or what this discussion is.
Right.
If it is just a report,
Yeah.
then the council can receive information
Okay.
on it. But if it's not taking any official action steps
Correct.
moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Nathan, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Please,
So,
join us.
and I was just planning on giving the presentation and then
Yeah.
also giving it to the commissioners. Obviously with the ARPA fund, the rescue funds, one of the uses, first. I'm Nathan Messer, president of the Commission Visitors Bureau for Boone County. But one of the things we talked about with it is with the ARP funds, they can be used for tourism. And over the past 2 years, our tourism industry, our hotels have taken a hit with people coming to town with events. So the CVB, they sponsored, to go back to 2019 before the pandemic, we sponsored 39 events a year. In 2020, we still sponsored 50, and in 21, we've sponsored 55 events. So those are events in the community from Thorntown, Zionsville, Whitestown, Lebanon, rural, at the fairgrounds. So our 2019 and 2020 budgets were $650,000 a year, and that money comes in from the innkeeper's tax that helps fund those items. Our 21 budget, we're on pace for 450, so we've been trying to hold back just because we are at such a deficit on income. Of that yearly budget, less than 120,000 of it is for the 2 staff members we have under contract and any other supplies. The rest of that money is pumped directly into the community, into small events, large events throughout. 62,000 of it a year goes to between the fairgrounds and Sugar Creek Art Center to help with their operations. But yeah, the remainder of that, which, $500,000+ a year is dumped directly into events within the community. Currently, our account balances are less than $400,000. Going into 2020, we had $650,000, and that's how we try and base our budget of cash on hand. That way, if the hotels don't happen, we've not committed money we don't have. With our current cash on hand, we can't even meet what we've done this year's budget, let alone what we were expected to do. And we were on about a 20-25% yearly growth rate with all the added hotels we were getting. So the CVB was really starting to try and grow forward. We've been knocked about 5 years backwards because the pandemic happened to everybody. We're no exception to the rules. But our 2019 revenues came in at $215,000 less than our 2020 revenues were $215,000 less than our 2019 revenues. And year to date, we're $55,000 less in 21 than we were in 19. So that comes out to about a $270,000 reduction that we've had over the 19. And as I said, we were on an increased pace. We were using some of our cash reserves to help hit that 650 because we had the cash on hand. We knew we were increasing. We expected to hit those numbers by 2021. But instead we've gone the opposite direction. And we cut back heavily this year. A lot of events that we would give $10,000 worth of marketing and advertising money, we've had to cut back and say, okay, what's more important? Do you need money to make your event happen, or do you need the marketing? We can't do both. So it's a lot of those events have limped through the past 2 years with us. As we said, we've grown 16 additional events this year over 19. And a lot of these are large events. A lot of them are at the fairgrounds. They're involving hotel stays, putting people heads in beds, people at our restaurants, people spending money in our communities. So Just wanted to put this one out there to council as a use. While obviously it includes nonprofits and ARP funds, there's other sources of tourism. All 55 of these could come to you individually and say, hey, we had this struggle last year, and ask for small pieces, but we're coming as the CVB on behalf of all of these we want to continue to be able to support the community the way we are, but we did take a sizable hit. Obviously, there's a lot of other people leveraging for these funds, but I just wanted to present this now as the thought as you get to the point of starting to disperse these funds and earmark these funds for American Rescue Plan. And I intend to come to the commissioners meeting, kind of same deal. That way everyone's aware of the need in the community. So other than that, thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'm here, but just wanted to present and let everyone know. Keep us in mind, if you would, when you look at those funds.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
Tom Santel, I just want to comment, as Elise knows, serving on the Convention and Visitors Bureau, I serve as vice president with Nathan. A lot of these funds go to the 4-H fairgrounds because as people come in and request grants, which make a lot of sense, a lot of times it's for rentals at the 4-H fairgrounds, which is really remains our Convention and Visitors Bureau for the county. So this creates a lot of revenue for the 4-H fairgrounds and certainly supports our restaurants, feeds back into our hotels and the quality of life in our community. So it's an exciting process in terms of what it contributes to the community, but keep that in mind when we come back and add these projects to the list and bring them forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thank you again. My apologies, Nathan. You're absolutely right. I didn't get that on the agenda. I apologize. And should we vote on this, I will recuse myself as a board member of this meeting. Okay. Any other public comment? All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Move to adjourn.
And a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we will sign the